You're surviving. Are your brains full yet? No, good. Okay, excellent. Okay, so I'm a behavioral scientist by trade. I got into this whole innovation thing as a result of trying to prove out these theories that I had when I was a failed academic, I guess you could say. And I really believed and still believe that all of this change that we all want in this world of ours is not going to just come from startups. It's not going to come from tech companies alone. It's going to come from boring traditional organizations. Who works at a boring traditional organization? You're my people. By the way, you all work at boring traditional organizations, even Google. Okay. And so if all of that pent up ability and potential energy is locked up in these traditional organizations, there's very little focus put on that. It's the only thing that we can really do in traditional organizations is incrementally improve here and there. And I thought that was messed up and not true, and I wanted to prove it out. But the place to prove something out is not in academia. I had to go prove it out in the real world. So, I have a beard. I lived in California for a long time, so now I'm going to talk about the future. These are the jokes again. Okay, thank you. So, the future is not known. So anybody that comes up on stage and tells you they know exactly what's going to happen in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road is either A, lying to you, or B, trying to sell you something, or somewhere in the middle. And I'm not. So the thing is, the future are these choose your own adventure books. Did anyone read these as kids? These are awesome. So think about what these are. Every book presents a challenge or a scenario. So in this case, a supercomputer is going to take over the world in the year 1999, which at the time was far in the future. In the beginning of the book, you're presented with a bunch of information. So 4 to 5 pages of information. These are your friends, this is your name, this is what's going on. Then right afterwards, you're presented with a series of choices. That is the world. Trying to gain as much information as you can. That's why we go to school. That's why you come to this conference. That's why you try to learn from each other. That's really good. The world is over-optimized on learning stuff. What we're not so good at is the choice part. And what is a choice? A choice or a decision is something that is both you're trying to optimize for something that you want, and then you're also baked into it is what you want. And that is very subjective. What I want, what you want, what she wants could be completely different and not necessarily bad. So, have you ever been in a company that made a decision or made a choice that was probably not the best choice because it was politically expedient? This is cathartic, people. Emote. We all have, because we get locked into these things and we over-optimize on learning and think that learning will somehow set us free and then we'll make the best choices, and that's not always the case. How many of us at the beginning of the year said we were going to work out more? How few of us actually did, right? We believe it when we set that goal, but the actions don't follow because our choice capability and our decision-making capability aren't necessarily tied together. And why? Because we're all humans. This was a study that was done by academics years ago, and I don't know why. Maybe they were trying to spend grant money. But they wanted to see if our faces in North America had collectively changed over the past 100 years. So what they did was they took tens of thousands of yearbook photos and ran them through this computer facial recognition software. And one of the only findings that they found, honestly and truly, was that we smile more in pictures. Look at the guy from 1910 and the guy from 2010. He's way happier. No, he's not. Anyway, I bring this up to show you that we are not changing very much. The hardware, the software, the operating system, that's you, that's me, that's your spouse, that's your kids, that's your boss, that's your employee, that's your customer, is pretty much the same. What has changed around us, and dare I say exponentially so, is the stuff around us. So this is the humble telephone during roughly the same time period. And you think about all that that represents, all of that exponential change, and you think that today is bad. Do you feel like change is happening really, really fast right now? This is the slowest pace of change that you will experience in your life. Think about that. It's crazy. Think about where your kids will be at this phase in your life. Who knows, right? So, but what we are is people, and that is still the thing. It's still learning the most information we can and then finding ways of making decisions better. That's the whole game. And if it's really that simple, what's gotten very confusing is where to get information and how do we make better decisions. And what would happen is, I worked in large organizations. First, I started working at Walmart after graduate school, which my wife describes as Bentonville, Arkansas. Anyone been to Bentonville, Arkansas? Imagine a place and then take away stuff. It's a very small town. It was awesome. I learned a lot. And then at Lowe's, these large Fortune 100 companies, and what ends up happening is we inflict our own damage and why we can't progress. I would get emails from executives like this. Oh, there's this article in the newspaper. Retail is melting down. What are we doing to react to this? And then that would send my team into a whole tailspin of reacting to whatever silly executive email we got. And then we would be wasting time and never really progress. Has anyone gotten the stupid executive email? Or maybe you've sent the stupid executive email. It's time to reflect. I have also sent some of these. And because the world is in such tumult and everything is changing so much, and oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? The only real thing that corporate organizations seem to think will solve their problem is to do this very unique thing in this history of our time. And that is to start an innovation lab. Do you have an innovation lab? I have started quite a few, so I can talk trash about it. So think about what this is. Innovation lab is an idea that what's missing from us, there's so much going on in the world, what's missing is we don't have skills. We don't have the people with those skills. That's the fundamental belief. So what we're going to do is to acquire those skills is we're going to go to whatever hipster part of town we have in our headquarters or all of San Francisco and set up shop. Let me tell you what this building looks like. It's got exposed brick. There's some cool ducting. The snacks are excellent. There's healthy snacks, but no one eats those. They eat all the garbage. And you hire millennials, because that's the thing you do. And then you let them have a relaxed dress code. So whatever it is you do, it's like 2 steps below. And then you as an executive team will go out and go to your lab, and you'll say, oh, wow, this is amazing. And you'll stare at these poor people like they're animals in a zoo. And sometimes they'll look back at you, and you're like, I think that one feels things like I feel things. And the person's like, no, you just think that. Don't humanize them. Anyway, then you go to other labs. So you go to other friendly labs, right? And you do what I call, it doesn't matter what town you're in, it's the Silicon Valley Zoo Tour. And you'll do the exact same thing. And someone will like jump up and show you something cool that happened. And then you go to Google and Facebook, and then you have a nice dinner and you're done. Okay? Then you'll go back and say, wow, we're so innovative. How cool are we? Then what happens is you've trained these very smart young people, usually, all of the problems in your industry. They come up with some cool solutions. Maybe they work, maybe they don't. And then they show it to you, and you go, oh, cool. Maybe later. Because there was never really a thought of how you would inject these things back into the organization. And then guess what? These people have believed the urgency of why they are there. They get annoyed, and they leave, and they become your new competitor. I've seen it happen all over and over and over and over. This model does not work. If you think about all the innovation labs that have been announced and all of the fanfare around it, now can you think of any large organization that disrupted themselves through their innovation lab? Very few. There are a couple examples, but proportionally to the amount of resources expended, this model does not work because it's fundamentally flawed. It is not a skills problem, it is a people problem. Can I tell you a story? I tell you a story? Okay. The year was 2012. It was a kinder time, a simpler time. You were all in high school. This is just full-on flattery. Anyways. Before I get into that, Barack Obama has just elected a second term. Okay? And then Hurricane Sandy has wiped off a significant portion of the Northeast in the United States. I don't know if anyone's been there recently, but it's still digging out. So you're seeing the effects of global climate change in a large population center again in the United States. And this guy was rocking the charts globally. Do you remember Psy? He was global domination. Global domination. Okay? So that was whatever you were doing when you were rocking out to Psy, that's where you were at the time. And I worked at this place. So Lowe's is a Fortune 40 home improvement company. I worked as an academic before, and then worked at Walmart, and then got recruited to Lowe's. Now, has anyone been to a Lowe's before? It's the blue one. Okay, just in case you're wondering. Lowe's is a Fortune 40 home improvement company. Super, super dull. When I say Lowe's home improvement, the next thing you think of isn't disruptive innovation. Is that fair to say? That's why I was working there. I had these ideas, I hadn't been able to fully implement them yet, and I thought this was a good place. So I was running this thing called international research, which is a uniquely American way of looking at the world, where the United States is the center of the universe and then everything else is this amorphous international zone. So Lowe's has these 100,000 square foot boxes from sea to shining sea, and they're very, very profitable. Lowe's makes a ton of money. But there's only so many places you can expand, and they looked up, this is before my time, of course, they looked up and looked down and said, there's 2 countries on this continent. If they love it here, they're gonna love it there. So they put these exact boxes in Canada and Mexico. If you took a picture of in Monterey, Mexico in the parking lot, or in Charlotte, North Carolina, or in Toronto, Ontario, you would not be able to tell the difference, or have a hard time. Anyone wanna guess how Canada and Mexico did right out of the gate? Not so good. Canada bad, Mexico real bad, okay? Mexico real bad. So I went into Mexico to try to figure out what was going on. And I would interview people, and I'm a researcher, so I would do all this fancy research, statistically significant. You've seen the type, you know, one-on-one interviews, lots of charts, these are the segments, all that kind of stuff. But essentially what the research boiled down to was these boxes were appearing in people's neighborhoods, and they did not know what it was. And so I said things like, well, it's like home and bath, and things like that. And they go, oh, that sounds great, I'd like to go there. So my recommendation to this team, whose job it was to make money, not lose money, was basically to put a sign on the outside about what's on the inside. So I'm thinking this is like the easiest of all recommendations. Now, if you want to convince important people to do something, what is the form that it takes in your company? PowerPoint presentation, much like I'm doing today. And it was beautiful, and I had laughs, and they laughed even harder than you laughed. And I really connected with them. I showed them some really impassioned videos of customers. And my recommendations were literally like, put a sign on the outside of what's on the inside. The president of Lowe's Mexico at the time said, Kyle, what an awesome presentation. What a great presentation. I got a high five, okay? Got a high five. But basically, I'm not doing any of it, with a smile. Have you ever given a great presentation that no one did any of the things you asked them to do? What is the point of the presentation? The whole idea of the presentation is to get you to do something else. And if it doesn't work, how can you tell me I did a great job? I did a bad job. I'd rather have you hate my guts and try some of this stuff, honestly, than like me and not do any of it, because what's the point? And at that point, I was just like, forget it. I've had enough of this. I'm not going to spend my life giving great presentations that don't go anywhere. Meanwhile, I felt like I really had an idea of how to transform a company, but wasn't able to do it yet. So I went home, told on him to the CEO, and he wasn't there very much longer. And the CEO says to me, Kyle, what would you do to like really change this company? And I said, well, you really want to know? Like, you really want to know? And I laid out this whole crazy, wild-eyed plan, which I'll go into in a second. But before I get into the how, I want to talk about some of the things we did. We created exosuits for our employees, so they carry roughly the weight of the person's torso all day, reduces injury almost to zero, built the largest 3D scanning company in the world at Lowe's, so truckloads of things are brought in, they're scanned, they can be used for VR, AR, marketing, and 3D printing. Imagine what that does when you're a large purveyor of stuff. We partnered with Google, Microsoft, Magic Leap, and others, and we literally built VR and AR applications from the ground up in the early days before anybody else. Put a 3D printer in the International Space Station with our friends at Made in Space, and the first thing commercially manufactured off the planet is a wrench. Isn't that crazy? Our wrench. We built the largest virtual reality training devices for all employees and for customers. So if you want to learn how to like retile your bathroom, you don't have to wait till that weird class every third Thursday. You put on the headset, and you're ready to go. And this is about 4 times as effective as the class. And last but not least, we also built the first autonomous robots with our friends at this company called Fellow Robots, which are now being used all over the world. You talk to it, it talks to you, it speaks 25 different languages, and then while it's helping customers navigate the aisles autonomously, it's also scanning the shelves. So every single one of these things reduced our cost, solved a gnarly problem that we thought was intractable, and made us money along the way. And the Lowe's went a very far way very quickly, and all the way to the point where Lowe's was named the #1 company in AR and VR in the world. Not amongst retailers, but in the world. Does that make any sense at all? Home improvement company, makes no sense at all. And then named by Fortune as the #1 in innovation in our category. And why does that matter? It means we can attract the best talent. Everybody wants to work for the best, the most innovative. They just do. They just do. It doesn't matter what department you're in, that's where you want to work. So, do you want to know how we did it? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you anyway. So, in my research, and then since interviewing folks since, like Elon Musk and others too, what we found is there's really 3 things. And it's moving from this big T transformation idea, which just doesn't work. If you want to say, I'm going to completely transform the company, those don't really work. What does work is making small little t transformations that add up to a big T transformation that you're going for, right? And when I say transformation, transformation means discomfort, means pain, and you can innovate and transform within your sphere. There are 3 things that we found in our research and in my practice that if you do have, it works, and if you don't have, it falls apart. So you can have it for a while and it'll fall away and it won't work, or you can never have it and it comes back. These 3 things are: A, strategic narrative. You have to have a real narrative of what you're doing. And your organization has to understand what that is and be able to communicate it to each other and to others. Let me give you an example of that. It's actually the complete opposite, before I get into that, the complete opposite of how most companies operate. What a narrative is a high degree of clarity with a very low degree of certainty. And what I mean by that is, remember John F. Kennedy and the famous moonshot? You probably heard a lot about it the last couple days. Now, when he said, we are going to put a man on the moon, that is a high degree of clarity. We know what the goal is. Did they have any idea how that was going to work? Very low idea of how that was going to work. How do most companies operate? The complete opposite. High degree of certainty. I have a 10-year IT roadmap. I know every step along the way. I know every single thing. But you get to the end of that IT roadmap and you're like, why did we even do that? When we started this IT roadmap, there was no such thing as the iPhone. What have we done? So you have people that are operating just to operate rather than driven by a purpose and a vision, right? Every great startup, every great big thing, good or bad, starts with a strategic narrative. Now, going back to John F. Kennedy, this is an apocryphal story, I'm sure, but it illustrates my point. A couple of years after he made his famous moonshot speech, he was, touring different NASA facilities, and he saw this guy mopping the floor, and as presidents often do, stopped and talked to him and said, "What do you do here, sir?" And he said, "Mr. President, I'm helping to put a man on the moon." Now, whether that story is real or apocryphal, I don't know, but it illustrates my point. That person knew exactly how their small piece added up to a bigger thing. I would ask you, do people on your team know what small part they're playing into the larger piece? And if they don't, that's probably why things are off track, right? Second, once you know what you want to do, once you have that degree of clarity, go back to John F. Kennedy, you have to break down, if we want to get here by now, what do we have to do today? What are all of the real steps that have to take? Who are all of the people we have to influence? What are all the official checks we have to get? And who are all the unofficial people we have to get engaged? Now, people always underestimate how hard this is. If I hear one more time about customer centricity, I'm going to lose my mind. Part of that problem, once again, it's not a wrong idea. What's wrong about it is your first customer is you, whoever you have to get through to get to the customer. Does that make sense? You will never get to the customer if you can't get through your board, if you can't get through your manager, if you can't get through the next level. So you should attack your organization with the ferocity that you would have for a go-to-market strategy. That's your first go-to-market strategy. So literally write it down and write the people associated with that. And thirdly, this is really important. You need to have new KPIs, new measures of success for understanding what's working and not working with this new stuff. The fundamental thing here is whatever you're doing to measure your existing business, do not use that to measure the new thing. That's pretty much it. Now, all of these stories about Kodak and Sears and others, Kodak is a great example. Kodak invented, as we all know, and spent years and years and millions of dollars developing the digital camera. One of the main reasons they didn't go after it was because they used the mature metrics of success on this nascent business. And they could not see the hockey stick that was coming. So we all do that. The only way to break it out is just to use different metrics, right? Cool. Because ultimately, we are all surrounded by paperclips. This is a study that I love that was done a few years ago. And people were presented with a task. And the task The solution to the task required a long, thin piece of metal, basically a paper clip unfurled. And if people were presented with the exact task with the piece of paper with the paper clip in paper clip form, almost no one could solve the task. Now, if people were presented with the same exact task, but with the paper clip unfurled, almost all could. And the reason why I bring this up is to say we are surrounded by paper clips. The only thing that the startup has versus us is their ability to think about our stuff in a different way. That's it. They have nothing else. In fact, we have everything else. They have nothing else. So that ability to think differently is core to what we are. And if you think about what really motivates us, what really drives us, it is this uniquely human thing called story. We love stories. I've said twice, can I tell you a story? That is a total hack, because as soon as I say story, your brain lights up, a little bit of oxytocin and dopamine gets released into your head, and I can see you lean forward. You can't help yourself. We are hardwired to love and receive stories. Remember when I went back to my thing about the man not changing? We are hardwired to love and receive stories. It is our first innovation, in my view. It is our compression code. We take really complex things and package it all up in these weird stories, and then we use them as shorthand to share complex things with each other, right? Every religious text, every folk text, every single great story, Star Wars, everything from time began is baked into this because we love it so much. How many times have you stayed up way too late binge watching something stupid, knowing full well you're going to have to wake up the next morning early? We are hardwired to love and receive stories. Don't forget about that. It's so important. What is your strategic narrative? So my big idea, the CEO, was like, this is it. Presented this research that I had done on storytelling and how important it was. And he was like, okay, cool, I'm an accountant. What does that mean? I'm not giving him the credit he deserves. He's amazing. And I said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take all of our research and I'd like to hire professional published science fiction writers. This is a home improvement company in North Carolina, okay? Just to set the stage. And he said, okay. I was like, great. And I ran out of his office. I'm like, I got the green light. So what I did was I hired professional published science fiction writers. This is before Oculus Rift came out on Kickstarter. And I let them kind of run free to see what the future, the possible convergence of tech and people trends might be, right? This is a plausible, probable future. It's not definite, but it's plausible and probable. And in this story, a real story, there's a couple redesigning their kitchen. And where are these people not? They're not in a store. So if you're the purveyor of 100,000 square foot boxes and your sole task is to drive people to the store, this scares you beyond all belief, right? This destroys your whole model. Where is Lowe's in this? What this story did was, first, every time I do this with comic books are meant to be like, sneakily invasive. People open it up, they always giggle and laugh. I've done this so many times now. They laugh and then they like start talking about it, and then it becomes like this very heated battle about the future of the organization. That's how powerful stories are. And that's what I did. Instead of doing a PowerPoint, I passed out comic books. And we read about the future and then debated that future vigorously. Okay, coming out of this, and there's more stories to tell, which I'll tell over, hors d'oeuvres later, was okay, cool, go for it. But we had no business doing VR and AR. It was such a nascent industry to begin with. And we definitely had no capability whatsoever. We still have green screens inside the store. Remember green screens like DOS? We still had those, okay? So that's where we were starting from. So we literally built this with a ragtag group of people that I found that were soon acquired by Apple, actually. And we put these 30 by 30 square foot boxes in 2 stores in Canada. And on the outside, what you could do is you could design your bath, and then you could go in this giant box like you were really in it. All of those stores made a lot more money. But that's not what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to scale something that made us a little bit more money. We were trying to get to that future that was in this thing here faster than anybody else and build out all the undergirding tech before anybody else. That was going to be our path to success. What the story allowed us to do, before I get more into the actual story there, what the story allows you to do is it allows you to cross that chasm. This is all about dealing with this fear of the unknown. The primary driver of most corporations is to reduce risk, which is essentially another word of saying reducing the fear of the people making the decisions. So if you address that problem as the primary problem, stories can help you leapfrog that without providing the certainty that they're going to ask for, because you just don't know. if you're first to the water, you really don't know what's down there. Could be good, could be bad, but someone's got to try it, and it might as well be you. So from that first, these are those big boxes. From those first tests, we were seeing that people were strongly loving this thing. But once again, it didn't matter. It did matter because we were able to iterate and change, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to get to this future before anybody else. And so we iterated over and over and over again, and we were able to deviate and make different changes that were all on the basis of this story. If we had not had that story as our North Star, we would have not created this 3D scanning company, we would have not done virtual reality training, we would have not done any of the things that ultimately led up to this thing that sits on your phone now, and be way ahead to market of anybody else. Because one of the critical things that I learned in my social science background was just applying an experimental design. Remember the scientific method? Have you used the scientific method in your own company? Probably not. What's my hypothesis? What are we testing? How do we measure it? What will we do at the end of that test? Really simple stuff, which is shocking to me how few companies actually do this, but we applied it. And so every test along the way, the drivers were cognition and motivation. Would this cause me to stay engaged with Lowe's more? Would I get more of their attention? That was it. It wasn't even about sales. Sales was a natural byproduct, but that wasn't the thing, because once again, the current business was being judged on sales. We were going for cognition. So how do you measure cognition? Well, surprise, surprise, I'm a really terrible neuroscientist. And so what we did was we put EEG headsets on everybody that we would test these things on, and eye tracking goggles. And what I could do is I could see what was going on in their head, and I could use it to measure across different experiences. So this is the real test from the first time we ever did this, using this tablet-based augmented reality system. At the time, everyone was really focused on virtual reality. Oculus Rift had come out to great acclaim. They were soon to be acquired by Facebook. Everyone was really focused on strapped-to-your-face virtual reality. And we were too. We had tested all these different things. But using new measures of success or new KPIs, we put EEG headsets on people and we compared against the best visualization system we had at the time, which is that weird bathroom in every home improvement store that you've been to. You know, you go in and you like open the cabinets and like everyone turns on the knob. There's no water that comes out. I don't know why people turn the knob, but they do. Everyone does it. And it looks kind of shocked that nothing happened. And so we tested this wearing this, and this is one measure. There are many more measures. And this is cognitive load. So when you think about thinking, you don't want to be overwhelmed. You don't want to be underwhelmed. You just want to be whelmed. You want to be in a perfect state of whelmment. Some people call this a zone. Some people call it lots of different things. So you want to be in this middle zone. And when they were testing this traditional thing, they're overloaded. And why? It's not their style. A lot of people were saying, I came into the store to get rid of this kitchen, but here it is before me. Things are broken because these have been in the store for a long time, and I can't make any changes to it. So when we tested all of their VR and AR, all of their VR systems, so strapped to your face, the delta between the top and the bottom represents a ton of money. A ton of money. And so it did much, much better. But when we tested, the board and the management team would constantly ask me, well, when are we ready to scale, Kyle? Like, these are all seem to be making money. How do we know we're going to scale? And it was only when we did this tablet phone-based AR from Google, through our unique partnership with them, before it went on the market, way before, we could see that phone-based or tablet-based augmented reality was going to be the thing. And this was against the tradition and against the trends and against the industry, what everybody was saying. But because we had a new measure of success and we could compare it against, we could see that the cognition here was nearly perfect the entire time. I can give you a quick example. When someone wears something strapped to their face, they may like it, but it overwhelms them very quickly. Very quickly. I don't know if anyone's done virtual reality. It's cool, but it overwhelms you very quickly because our brains are not set up for that yet. Now, people were still getting overwhelmed when they were holding it up this way and just augmenting an existing reality. But when their brains were getting overheated, the natural inclination was just to lift up a little bit, and then their brains would naturally cool down. You can't do that when the thing's sucked to your face, or not very easily. No customer could have told me that. I wouldn't have figured that out. But because we had this new measure of success, we were able to look at that and see that and then make those changes. And then as a result, I was able to take these findings and go to the board and say, we need to sell phones inside the store. They looked at me like I was from Mars. We don't do that. That's insane. And And I convinced them to, but they said, cool, but we're not going to like support it with any real marketing. We'll just see what happens, which is like, the death knell, right? And so we did it, and we were able to partner with Google and stuff, which is pretty cool, but just putting out videos on YouTube, we sold out of these phones in 4 days. Think about that. People are spending north of $500 on a smartphone it's a great phone to begin with, but in order primarily to be able to do all of the home improvement stuff that they want to do and then spend tens of thousands of dollars right afterwards. It's a pretty good deal. We would have never gotten there had we not had 3D scanning, had we not have all these VR, AR partnerships. All of these things laddered up to our ability to do that and to do it quickly. Does that make sense? Which all started with a story. High degree of clarity, very low certainty. I could have never mapped that out. And then, I won't go into all the different things, because I really want to spend some time on this. So the company that we started and got acquired by Singularity, and now we're called the Uncommon Partners Lab, is one of the core principles here. And I want you to really spend some time thinking about this tonight. It's uncommon partnerships. And I worded it awkwardly on purpose. It's meant to be awkward. It's supposed to stick in your head. Uncommon means anyone that you would not normally work with. So if someone said Lowe's and NASA, they're like, what? Like, perfect. I'm in the right spot. Whoever it is that people would normally think you should work with, that's who you should talk to. And then the other really critical piece is partnership. When you have a partnership, you are more vested in the relationship than you are if it's a vendor-vendee. Think about it this way. Think about your home life. Your spouse, significant other will say, honey, you look ridiculous. You're not leaving the house with those shoes on. A vendor-vendee will never say anything but laugh about you in the corner. I want partners. In the messy front end of all of this stuff, you really need someone to say, I don't like the person you just hired. He is bad. That's what a partner does. They have the hard conversations, and they have them early, and they have them often. And you do the same thing with them. You say, I don't like this thing you built, or your price is too high, or it's too whatever. Those are real partnerships. And when people come together like that, you can do incredible things. This is Marco Mascoro behind. He was working on a completely different robotics solution. I went around to every single large robotics manufacturer in the world. I'm the head of innovation at a Fortune 40 company. And I went to them and I said, I want these robots. They've been approved. If you make them, I will buy a lot of them. And guess what? I bet if we need them, I bet every other retailer on the planet will need it too. And every single one of them said, that's nice, but I already know what I'm going to build. There's something really wrong with that, right? I'm the market saying, I know what I want. I build this for me and I'll buy it. They're saying, I think I know what the market wants anyway, so don't worry. I'm just going to do whatever I want. So I went to Marco. It's a small robotics company out of Singularity. Literally ran into him at a cocktail party. And she showed me what he's working on. I explained what I wanted out of desperation. He said, oh yeah, I totally get it. And within 2 months, we had a complete workable prototype, fully autonomous robots. So we put fully autonomous robots in a store with green screens. So think about that. That is a hard job to do. Only somebody like that that's really vested in what you're doing and really believes in your mission, he completely pivoted his company to be able to transform it into this retail services computer vision company. And it's paid off very well for him, right? And I also had to put my trust in him that he wasn't just going to take our money and disappear. And so those partnerships are really critical. So I would think today, what partnerships do I need? And who haven't I talked to that would really scare people when I went back to the home office? They would go, huh? That's so weird. That's how you know when they're on track, okay? So when that happens, when you go back to the office and someone says, that's so weird. I can't believe you went to that conference and you want to work with who? You're like, yes, I know. It's my measure of success. It's working. Cool. And lastly, what I want to say too is, I know I threw a lot at you. There's a lot of stuff here. So we have a course, a digital course, that takes you through all of this and much, much more. And because you're here, if you want to sign up, you can sign up and get an extra 10% discount. But it gives you the rubric and the strength and the focus to be able to lay this out and actually apply this in your own company right now. Because once again, if I can just say one thing, if Lowe's can do this, literally anyone can do this. Like literally. And so if you're thinking, I don't know if I can do this or someone's going to buy it or whatever, they will. if you do the 3 steps and you apply that high degree of clarity, people will sign up, I promise. Thanks.